Thank you, everyone. So I'm Vincent Doumeizel from the Safe Seaweed Coalition, but I work for the United Nations at the Global Compact. I'm here to talk about a revolution, as it was named by CNN recently, the seaweed revolution. So you can move to next slide. So back 12,000 years ago, we moved from prehistory to civilization, to modern history, when we stopped being hunters-gatherers and developed agriculture on land. Growing crops and so forth. But we never did that with the ocean. We are still in the Stone Age when it comes to the ocean. So we are hunting and we are hunters and gatherers mostly. We hunt for fish and collect wild seaweed. So it's time for a revolution now because we have almost 1 billion people starving in the world today, and in the meantime, 70% of our planet is covered by ocean that contribute to less than 2% of our food. Once again, we are hunters-gatherers. We use the ocean mostly to dump our waste, and still we call that regenerative agriculture. So we should reconnect the land with our ocean. And if we want to start to build ecosystem at sea instead of destroying them, seaweed is a very good place to start because that's the lowest trophic level. So first of all, seaweed is a very large word. I mean, it's a very large etymology for some things that can be very, very different. Seaweed were the first complex living organism on the planet. We are all here descendant of blue seaweed. Back 500 million years ago only, green seaweed moved on land and gave birth to all the plants we have around us today. So typically, a green seaweed is genetically much closer to an oak tree or to a strawberry than it is to a red seaweed. The genetic difference between a red seaweed and a green seaweed is bigger than the difference between a fungi and a mammal. So, and an elephant, typically. So that's typically very, very different. It's important because this diverse area of genetics offers an equally diverse area of application. So seaweed, what for? Well, first, food. Typically, seaweed is a super nutritious food that contains a lot of iron, protein, much more proteins than in soy, by the way, a lot of vitamin B12, the only vegetable that contains vitamin B12. It can be a substitute to many meat, protein, and so forth. So it does not need to be kept cold. Once dry, you can keep it for months. It does not need any cold chain, anything. So it's a good news for emerging countries and for our climate. It's also a solution. I mean, 10% of the food in Japan is using seaweed. So once again, it's already there. You may be a meat lover. Still, seaweed is a very good source of feed, animal feed. Next, please. Here is the. Okay. No. So very good source of animal feed here. It can feed animal with very interesting side effects such as cutting methane emission by large and providing and cutting the use of antibiotics. Can be used as a biostimulant for plant. It can replace plastic in a very efficient way. It can support life in the ocean, provide marine habitat, and restore ecosystems in the ocean. It can also sequester massively carbon. Remember, it sequesters 3 times more carbon per square meters than the Amazon forest and than any land on land. So typically seaweed can grow up to 40 centimeters a day, up to 60 meters high. And while it grows, it's not only it absorbs a lot of carbon, but it sequesters part of this carbon because it's lost in the abyssal water, sending carbon back where it used to be, which is under the ocean. So that's the only food that reverses climate change. It's also create revenues for coastal communities and contribute to women empowerment because most of these the revenues are going to women in emerging countries at the moment. So that's a very interesting solution. The problem is that we are yet to understand it and yet to understand what's happening. So if you look at it, seaweed is already growing very fast. It's a 30 million tons business, employing 8 million people in Asia, growing at 10% a year. If you look at the green area here, you see that the wild harvesting, which is where we are in Europe, is stable, while it's growing very fast for cultivation. So we are talking about a 50 billion business that does not need land, nor fresh water, nor pesticide. it's only happening in Asia. Why Asia are the only one to use free resources? We don't know. It may be linked to the very intense link that they have between food and health that we have lost because we are moving to a very chemical pathway. Anyway, in order to lead the change, we have released the seaweed manifesto that you can download here, with a lot of famous names, trying to lead a revolution. And what we acknowledge is that we need to work together in a collaborative way. So we launched the Safe Seaweed Coalition. I will go very fast because I'm late, with a lot of organization. So the coalition is ongoing at the moment. Part of our governance, we have all the big names that are vital in this change.
Vincent, 30 secondes.
Yeah, so we are trying to map with this, we are trying to map the seaweed stakeholders, and we have already, in this coalition, a very large number of stakeholders. So you can join the coalition over there. We need to accelerate change. We need to attract investors. We need to get exposed. We need to bring together the seaweed community in order to build a very ethical and sustainable supply chain. We can be remembered as the first generation on this planet that managed to feed the entire world with safe and sustainable food while mitigating climate change. And I do remember we will, but we need to get together to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent. Gregory, please.